To think that Elder Scrolls IV: Oblivion was nearly a launch title for the Xbox 360, kicking off the 7th generation of consoles, is unreal. While it only released a few months later, I can only imagine how much more ridiculous hype for that console would have been had that been one of the handful of games people could have picked up on day one. While Oblivion is kind of considered the black sheep of modern Elder Scrolls games, it's also the exact game it needed to be at the time. Love Morrowind or not, it's a rough game to play today, and it was pretty cheap looking and clunky back at release too, especially if you got it on the original Xbox. And while Skyrim looked like an actual modern, high-budget title for 2011 standards, it sacrificed so much of what makes Western RPGs special to get there. Oblivion, by contrast, was a nice middle ground. The game was much smoother to play than Morrowind, but it still had a lot of the freeform, mechanical identity that makes Morrowind special. You could create spells that would break the game, or emphasize your acrobatics and speed in order to turn yourself into Sonic the Hedgehog with trampoline shoes. It was less of a guided tour than Skyrim, but it also wasn't entirely made out of popsicle sticks and spit either. When I finally got a 360 in 2007, there were a few games that were musts for me, and Oblivion was an absolute must. I played it for a couple of days when a friend brought it over, and then another friend, Luke, got Shivering Isles and Knights of the Nine a while later, which he let me use when I finally got my own copy. I played so much Oblivion during that time and enjoyed every janky moment. There was something else that I'd remembered though. Some other game there were previews for, which Luke had swore up and down would basically be another Oblivion but better. As was natural at the time, once Oblivion hit it big, people were looking left and right for the Oblivion killer that would highlight just how basic Bethesda was. Two Worlds was undoubtedly the loudest game to proudly don this moniker, and was the game Luke had been talking about. It absolutely billed itself as a Western RPG so amazing that you'd toss Oblivion in the dumpster and never look back. The pre-release marketing of Two Worlds was loud and fierce, so it's not a surprise when the industry and millions of players sat up and paid attention. So as soon as I finally connected my 360 to Xbox Live for the first time, and after a wealth of slow updates for the console and games I had, I downloaded the demo for Two Worlds and played the living hell out of it. I didn't understand or really notice most performance issues back then, and I was on a CRT using composite cables until right after I started this channel, at the end of 2014. But boy, I noticed the pop-in and the awful performance of Two Worlds even back then. I just didn't care. I kept that demo on my 360 for years, playing through it for a few hours several times a year. There was even a point where I spent like 5 hours straight clearing every single enemy out of the limited bit of map it gave you access to. Eventually, I picked up a copy, and you know what? Two Worlds isn't a good game. It's kind of a mess, but goddamn I love it anyway. Part of what makes the game so enjoyable is just how much passion was behind it. Just like Morrowind, it feels like a game the people involved with really wanted to make, not for money, but because they had ideas they wanted to see become a reality. What's more, it's a game that's okay taking risks with permanent choices. If you piss off a town enough, there's no way to come back from it. The entire hold will come after you until you're dead, you leave and never come back, or you've massacred them all. Heck, you can straight up beat the game a couple of minutes after you've started it, if you can defeat a specific character who you meet in the very first town. It's basically impossible to do yourself, kind of, but there's a speedrun strategy that can make it so that you don't have to do it yourself, and ingenious players can figure out other ways to do so, or even just put the main quest on hold for 30 hours until they're bulked up enough for a one-on-one. Spoilers for Two Worlds from here on, by the way, if you care. Most of the way through the story, the player enters a hold known as Ashos. As with all the holds in towns, there are several side quests you can do here. You can help a woman whose father died a while back and whose sister has recently been kidnapped, leaving her with almost nothing to live for. You can decide who to believe between a pair of siblings who are supposed to run their smithy together, but refuse to get along. Do you believe the brother who argues his sister wants to kick him out of the business to keep it for herself, despite her not knowing anything about the trade? Or do you believe the sister who argues her brother is the one that never paid attention to their father's work and who is extremely violent and looking for ways to kill her? There's a quest you can do for the mayor to quickly rush to a manor outside of town and grab some medicine from an alchemist, only to find out that the medicine is for his lycanthropy, and that the alchemist says he's actually killed citizens on more than one occasion while transformed. But there's also a main quest objective here. The main quest objective tasks you with getting into an underground area and collecting an artifact, the Water Relic. It's one of 4 relics and 6 total parts required to make a much more powerful artifact that can supposedly summon a god. This is the only way you can save your sister, and you don't believe in gods and such anyway, so you'll gladly grab a few pointless trinkets if it means she stays safe. If you talk to the guard outside of Ashos, you'll have learned that the hold is protected by the Eye of Yatolin. A healthy army of orcs has been waiting patiently for ages now for the opportunity to wipe out the population of Ashos, but unlike our main character, orcs are very superstitious and terrified of the wrath of Yatolin, who watches over Ashos. A smart player might make the connection between the main quest and the Eye of Yatolin, but many might not, considering they've probably already picked up several of the other elemental relics across the story. Nothing of note has happened when you grabbed the others, and none of them were tied to the powers of gods either. There's no real reason to expect that anything will happen when you grab just one more elemental relic. And honestly, you're probably not even thinking about the main quest that hard when you get to Ashos, because there's always plenty to do in these large holds. But unfortunately, whether the eye actually does anything or not, that doesn't change the fact that the orcs believe it does. Potentially hours later, after you've had your fill of side questing in Ashos, you'll have the key to the underground, you'll have explored it, and you'll have finally grabbed the Water Relic. You'll casually leave the underground back into Ashos with the relic in your hands, and immediately be hit in the face with your own hubris. Everyone in Ashos is dead. When you picked up the jewel, the eye disappeared, and the ever-watchful orcs noticed. It doesn't take long for them to overrun the town. This isn't like Kvatch in Oblivion, which is utterly decimated before you even get there. Ashos is a genuine hold with characters, shops, quests, and more. It doesn't feel any lighter on content or any different from the rest of the game, or from any of the intact holds you'd find in Oblivion. And once you wipe out the orcs, it's a ghost town. It doesn't fill back up with replacement NPCs. It's gone, and you did it. No cutscenes, no painfully obvious foreshadowing, no Hollywood. You did a quest, and your reward is a stupid rock and the decimation of the best hold in the game, and several characters that you had just helped feel like life was worth living. And now you have to try and reconcile with your decision to play it like a standard RPG quest with guardrails, where you'll only destroy the livelihoods of others if you're choosing to be woefully greedy, ignorant, or just plain evil. Not to mention wondering if your player character is wise to mock the gods as he does. This isn't the only quest where this happens either. There's one where you can help Karga clan rebels triumph over the abuses of the House of Skeldon, but there's no great answer. You can help the house if you care much more about power than people. You can listen to the rebel leader and use stolen information to scare the house away. Or you can listen to the rebel leader's bloodthirsty son and murder the house leader, and probably need to kill everyone else at the house camp along the way. While helping the house is more or less just plain bad, not everyone in the house is a bad person. A lot of them are just doing their jobs and trying to keep the peace. They feel like their actions are necessary and aren't privy to the cruelty of the house on a grander scale. You might think listening to the son of the rebel leader is likewise the personally gratifying and more reward-heavy route, but also the crueler solution between the two where you side with the Karga clan. You can drive the house out and remove all of their power without violence, and so the violence itself is entirely unnecessary outside of for the sake of catharsis. So since you've likely got plenty of gold already, great equipment, and there's really nothing the sun could possibly offer you that would be worth it to a well-traveled player, you should just side with his father and avoid violence instead, right? That's how a Bethesda game would write such a quest, if it didn't just make it a gray area between Karga clan and House of Skeldon to begin with. Well, unfortunately, the non-violent route also has unforeseen consequences. You see, if you've spent time in the camp where the house leader is, you'll know that he has a prisoner he's keeping in a nearby home, a young woman who he's been abusing for the sake of getting information. She is, for all intents and purposes, just an innocent bystander. It's possible to free her, but to do so will alert the leader of the House of Skeldon, forcing you to kill them all. It's an easy way to do what the Karga clan leader's son wants for sure, but if you instead collect the documents to shame Skeldon out of power to avoid violence, when they flee the region, they take her with them. There was no way to save the innocent woman, deplatform the House of Skeldon, and avoid violence. And this is a decision you have to make, because it's tied to getting another piece of the main quest artifact. There's a quest where you'll find a tiny little town in a dense forest area, where the people are all in a panic, and beg you to leave, lest you doom them forever. If you keep exploring like you would in an RPG, you'll eventually find a fight with a pair of giants not far from there, at the site of a strange obelisk. Make your way back to the town, and everyone is dead, with more giants having done the deed. There isn't much explanation, other than that you should have just left things alone. You can attempt to save a fishing village from a curse, which was supposedly put on them by a god of the sea, after one of the residents accidentally killed his brother. You see, apparently this god demands sacrifice every once in a while, and the man who was killed on land was supposed to die at sea to sate said god. The brother is not only distraught for accidentally killing his sibling, but also for causing his sister-in-law's oppressive depression, and now apparently the curse. In the end, the wife of the man who died decides to sacrifice herself to stop the curse, but this only affords the fishing village brief respite, because depending on what order you do certain quests, you'll eventually come to find that the same village has been stricken by a plague that's decimating them, though this doesn't actually seem to manifest in any meaningful way mechanically, to be fair. Another quest deals with a mages guild, who has abused nature in order to duplicate one of their rank, because they desperately needed more hands on deck. One of the younger, fresher mages who serves as the apprentice to the one who was duplicated is horrified by this fact, because neither of the mages thinks they're the duplicate. They both think they're the original, and at this point want the duplicate destroyed. This is a quest where there's no real right answer. You can snub the apprentice, which is generally seen as the wrong answer, but there's legitimately no way to tell which is the original mage. Because in a sense, neither one really is. The higher-up mages knew this all along and couldn't be bothered to mark them in any way, because as far as they're concerned, there's no reason to care. They don't really regret duplicating him either, in spite of the strife it's caused. In the end, if you decide to destroy one of the duplicates, there's no cathartic answer offered, no indication of if they had separate souls or consciousnesses, no indication of if they are no longer complete without the other, no solace whatsoever is offered, and no lore related to the magic involved hints towards whether or not this was a simple act of cleanup, a moral good, or murder. A real individual may be gone from the world now, or they may not be, and maybe you did, or didn't destroy the real and original mage at the behest of their duplicate that lusted to take his place. I think it's a great touch that they both have identical dialogue the entire way. This quest just happens. It's empty, and then you're asked to move on, and it's great. Or it can be, if you're okay with doing a lot of the heavy lifting, because in spite of the theoretical highs that Two Worlds can hit, as you've no doubt noticed, this game is a mess. Even on a modern PC, it still runs like absolute trash, no matter the settings you choose. Seriously, compare the stuttering at the lowest settings to a higher resolution and much higher settings. This game's combat still feels like awful, unbalanced mush. The game as a whole is extremely unbalanced. The graphics can be painful, even by 2007 standards. The inventory is awful. The voice acting is hysterical. This game isn't and has never really been an Oblivion killer. Hey, before we continue, it'd be cool if you thought about leaving a like and maybe subscribing if you're enjoying this video, and a share would mean the world. Sharing videos is what makes a difference for growth on YouTube these days, and the more people do it, the more effort can be put into videos like this. See it, share it, repeat it. Thanks so much for your time. Now, to be fair, Two Worlds design quirks do have their own charm. Progress in the game isn't designed to be stretched over 50 or 100 hours. Instead, the game packs the vast majority of your growth in the first 20 hours or so, and then it starts to spread out. Two Worlds has a static world in terms of enemies. New enemies might spawn in an old area if you trigger a quest reason for it, but otherwise, things you kill stay dead and stay lootable on that spot forever. And while alive, enemies have static stats instead of scaling to you. So the stronger they are, the stronger they are. This can turn fights into something that seems impossible if you run across certain enemies too early, though it's a bit more complicated than that, as we'll see in a bit. Regardless, you effectively have three forms of character progress. The most obvious is leveling, where you can dump points into stats, and both passive and active abilities. This isn't anything special. What's special is how equipment and potions are handled. Unlike Oblivion, equipment doesn't scale as you level. Different pieces of equipment have a definitive range of stats they'll sit within whenever you find it, and usually a level requirement, although it's rare for you to be under the required level when you find it. What equipment you find is what scales with your levels, though you can still find weaker or stronger equipment that falls outside of the average. If you find more than one piece of the same equipment though, you can combine them, boosting its stats. At first, this is a significant boost that will push it almost immediately above the range of the other equipment you're finding. After like 15 or 20 combinations, it starts to fall off hard. But for the first 20 or so hours, while character progress is still stratospheric, it likely won't be too long until you find something from a higher range that's stronger, and you can start the whole process over again. There's something really satisfying about how all this plays out, because it keeps equipment interesting so much more consistently than it is in Oblivion. In Oblivion, equipment only has a few levels. Once you get to the level with Dwarven stuff, for example, you equip the Dwarven stuff, or Elven stuff for the light armor variant. And then the loot you find is useless for progress until the next gate. But here, every body you loot is a chance to find something stronger, or a double of something you want to scale. Similar things can be said for spells. You have 3 spell/summon slots, 5 schools of magic, and 20 spells per school. Each slot you put a spell in also has 3 modifier slots, for making the spell more powerful or cost less, etc. The catch is that you can find or buy as many copies of a spell card or modifier card as you want, and then you're free to stack them all into a single slot. Spells themselves can be useful. In particular, I found a freezing spell useful for powerful groups of enemies, and summons good as a distraction. The other facet of Two Worlds leveling design is ludicrous. While it works no matter what, I would definitely recommend hoarding materials until you have your alchemy skill at 10, and then save scumming your way to victory. Alchemy in Two Worlds is simple. You always have the means to do it, and there are no ways to augment it other than having the alchemy stat higher. Take any materials, up to 10 total, and up to 5 types total, and then combine them. You can get 3 results from doing so. Elemental stones can be combined with equipment to add elemental properties, further bolstering weapon strength and allowing you to attack ghosts. These primarily end up the result of alchemy when you use a majority of metals and stones in your recipe. Next is temporary potions, which are made whenever you add any ingredients that offer a temporary effect. These can be incredibly powerful as long as you never include ingredients with permanent effects. Speaking of, that's the last and most important category of alchemy: permanent potions. If you primarily combine organic materials, specifically ones that only offer permanent effects, you'll end up with a potion that boosts stats, well, permanently. Go figure. However, with a high concentration of the same effect and a high alchemy skill, you can greatly boost the effect offered by the potion. To put it into perspective, each level gives you 5 points to put into any of your 4 core stats. Divided evenly, you'll maybe be at like 50 in each stat by the time you reach level 20. A potion with 10 of the same permanent stat boost tied to it can add anywhere from another 50 to another 100 to that stat. Immediately. You can go from having a couple thousand HP to having tens of thousands. It's broken, and I adore it. And the thing is, the game knows this, so there will be enemies you can find that will still theoretically challenge you anyway. It actually reminds me of the post-game of Skylight Free Range, which understood how effectively the player could break it, and so the developer put optional content in that expected you to be that powerful. I've also seen that the Disgaea games tend to do something similar, but on a more rigid scale. All of this makes the game feel quick and satisfying to restart and just play for 10 or 20 hours, because you never know which equipment you'll find first and most commonly, and how your character will become godlike in strength. Unfortunately, all of this might fall apart depending on how you respond to the combat as a whole. Honestly, the combat is kind of a joke. While certain enemy types are weaker to certain types of weapons, like skeletons being weak to blunt attacks, that's about as deep as it gets in terms of optimization for the most part. Otherwise, you swing with a single button, aim with a bow, or cast a spell. You have tons of spells, as we mentioned before, and you have tons of active abilities you can use technically. Some of these can have minor use, like the one that kicks dust into your enemy's eyes, which they love to use on you constantly. But there's still one strategy that is more or less foolproof in nearly all situations instead, and it ends up being the simplest one. You see, enemies basically only do one attack, sometimes two, and unless you stun them, they'll do it at a set interval. Meanwhile, your backstep gives you an enormous amount of invincibility frames. Seriously. Back when I first played Two Worlds, I hated the dodge because it felt far too small to escape attacks. I didn't understand invincibility frames as anything more than the blinky state you'd often find yourself in when you got hit in the 2D platformers I grew up with. I didn't know that games would give you invincibility in rolls to simplify the interaction between attacks and dodges into something usable for most players. Gaming magazines and stuff at the time didn't talk about that. So even though I'd played plenty of games with iframe dodges, like Kingdom Hearts, I never really questioned why attacks would go through me without damage. So I had no idea that the backstep in Two Worlds was the most powerful thing in the game, and could allow you to take down basically any enemy except for archers without much effort. Since enemies will more or less just stand there, and stand there, and stand there, and then do a single hand swipe or whatever before repeating, you only need to dodge that single attack, and you can dodge attacks coming at you from any angle. The timing isn't precise at all, since you get so many more iframes than enemy attacks have attack frames. This turns any one-on-one encounters into mashing with the occasional dodge. Meanwhile, any enemy type the game is going to throw at you in droves, outside of the very late game, is probably going to be quite a bit weaker than you, meaning the occasional dodge, while still just mashing out attacks on whoever is closest, still works. What do you do against late game enemy groups then? Oh, free spell if you have it, any summon you have that can tank damage, or hit and run. The free spell in particular straight up just allows you to go back to your normal tactics because the enemies will stay frozen for like 20 seconds or even more. It's an AoE, so it will hit everyone around you, and then you hit a single enemy to unfreeze them and play like normal, redoing the free spell every once in a while. There is absolutely less depth here than in Oblivion's already shallow combat, but importantly, just like with a game like Morrowind, for a lot of people it's not about having engaging combat, it's about having engaging systems to set yourself up for combat. It would be phenomenal if these games had both for once, but even Witcher 3 has really bland, mediocre combat on top of the story missions primarily having you fight nothing but drowners and humans. There's so much more that's quote-unquote wrong with Two Worlds as well. While there's more variation than Oblivion's world, most of the world is just kind of lush forests. Dungeons are basically all flat, lifeless caverns or temples that look like placeholders. Enemy variety is great, as is the creativity of a lot of the designs, but since they all more or less only have a single attack, and many of them share attacks down to the animation, that doesn't matter much. Quest design is nothing special. Your character and the story are kind of hilariously laughable and disinterested in themselves. Side quests can be interesting, or they can be RPG mush. Voice acting and dialogue are again also hysterical in a so bad it's good kind of way.
I told you not to follow me. Why are you here?
The village elder sent me. He wanted me to bring you the payment should you not return to the village.
And why should I not go back there, pray?
Character models are even more basic looking than Oblivion. The inventory system is torture since there's no way, at least on controller, to shuffle objects around like you might in Resident Evil 4's attaché case. The music though, the music is incredible. Just listen to this. So would I recommend Two Worlds? If you're someone whose taste doesn't align well with the random, low-tier, barely functioning junk, no, absolutely not. If you're someone who really loves games like Morrowind and Oblivion and just want more of that, maybe, but that would depend on the next qualifier. Are you someone who enjoys creativity, passion, and innovation, even if you have to dig really hard for it? Are you someone who likes trying jank and wants a game that is quick to get you into the content and the cycles that are most valuable to the experience? A game that's easy to break, but can also sometimes be fun and creative to break? If so, then I can't recommend Two Worlds enough. It even has native controller support on PC, though you have to change a value outside of the game to make that happen. But it works just as well as it did on Xbox 360. The sad part for me is that this series never stuck the landing. One day I'll talk about Two Worlds 2, which has had some questionable business practices surrounding it. I mean, even just when I was picking up the pair of these games for this video, I bought the collection on Steam, which markets itself as having both games and a host of other things, only to realize that Two Worlds 2 was no longer available on Steam. After refunding that, I got them on GOG. It seems Two Worlds 2 is back on Steam now, so it's safe to buy for now, but just look closely at what you're actually getting if you choose to try these games. And I'd recommend you do. Like I said, I will definitely look at Two Worlds 2 eventually as well, because it's actually a far better game, while still hanging on to that creativity. It's definitely of its time, with wobbly cameras, bloom everywhere, and a gruff new version of the original protagonist who no longer speaks in a medieval LARPer version of English. But it's a game that, at least as of the last time I played through it, I feel I could legitimately just recommend outright. And it too has perfectly functional controller support out of the box. Two Worlds is a relic of a time, where a developer nobody has ever heard of could decide to take on Titans, where most anyone could get the budget to take on the moniker of Halo Killer or Oblivion Killer. It's also one of the biggest failures at holding up that moniker in any way, unless you look very closely. If you use a microscope, you can see creativity blooming from this game. It's a game that, in spite of the story having almost nothing to do with two different worlds, very much lives up to its title. And for that, I will always love Two Worlds. But what do you guys think? Have you played Two Worlds? Did you enjoy it? What else do you think the game did that was awe-inspiring? And do you have any idea how to optimize the PC version so that it actually feels smooth to play? Sound off in the comments below, and I'll see you next time.